didn't do your flapping.
This is the age of the multi-dimensional self.
Hi there, I'm Kelly and this is Frog and we're from Divine Alchemy Healing, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how our childhood wounds can affect our ability to have happy, healthy relationships and what you can do about it. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about our childhood wounds and where they come from. And this is not about blaming our parents or anyone who looked after us. Sometimes it's not even our parents, it's other people that are influencing our childhood. But what happens as a child is your mind isn't fully developed, so you don't have the ability to see bigger pictures. And you also have a very simplistic sort of way of thinking, and that is, are my needs being met? Now, often adults and parents will look after us to the best of their own ability and according to what needs weren't met in their childhood, so they'll want to give you more of things that they didn't have. But what isn't understood is as the different generations come in, we come in on almost like a different energy template, and our needs are different to the generations that came before us. A really good example of this is the sort of war babies who came in and were very conditioned to just sweep things under the carpet no matter how traumatic things get, and they're quite black and white, and as long as their children were fed, clothed and clean, that was really all that they felt they needed to do as parents. Obviously the children that came in for them had more emotional awareness and emotional needs, which were often not fulfilled. Anyhow, so all of this is going to have an effect on who you draw to you in terms of relationships and what it triggers for you. So if you've got subconscious wounds that are all about receiving love and acceptance, for example, if someone then comes into your life who is immediately saying, wow, I love you, you're everything I've ever wanted, you're going to feel a real sense of relief at that, and it will blindside you to maybe some of the things that might not be healthy in terms of your relationship. For example, having good boundaries, having good communication, having a sense of who you are. So these patterns can be cleared and released quite easily, actually, especially when you've done a few relationships. You might be able to look back and notice that all your partners are sort of displaying the same traits but just in a different body. So you can see that there's a pattern that's gone on, and you can ask yourself the question, what is my role in attracting these people? What is it within me that attracts these certain types of character, or archetypes, some people might want to call them? Once you know that, you can start working to release these, and there's many ways to do that, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But I'm going to hand over to Frog now, who's going to talk a little bit more about self-awareness and everything you need to consider that's going on at this time.
Yeah, so it was interesting that, so Kelly sort of opened up there with also saying that we're not here to blame our parents, and just to chunk out there slightly, and that's not to blame our grandparents, and we can pass the blame on generations down into the dim, distant past that nobody can remember. But trauma is handed down bit by bit by each generation as well if it's not dealt with. And as well as that occurs, as Kelly says, in terms of each generation has its own template of awareness, that happens within civilizations and cultures as well. And so it's very difficult, to find or accurately identify ourselves sometimes when we're carrying all this baggage, which is not, just from our own immediate experience, but from cultural trauma and generational trauma as well. And I guess one of the things I was thinking there was that, mustn't blame ourselves for the time of day that we've arrived in. And when I say the time of day, I've referred to this before, I mean the time of civilization, the time of culture, the zeitgeist, if you will, the paradigm. Choose your adjective, but there's an overwhelming kind of cultural soup that we are experiencing, which is affecting our sense of self. And it's so important, of course, to have a sense of self which is at least accurate or in alignment with who we really are. Because without that, how can we identify the right partners for us, or the people that we're going to have the healthiest relationships with? And it's a tough time. You come into this world, you're given a name, it's written in capitals, you'll end up going to school and you respond to that name, and then you end up going to higher education, or maybe you go into the workforce and you suddenly have all these adult expectations about you, but nowhere along the way was there a lesson at school which sort of said how to be human, what it means to be human, what it means to be you. And so, especially when you're younger, you come into the world at a point where you're driven by your hormones and a wish to pair bond and reproduce and what have you, and to try and find a perfect partner, and you've got all these kind of ideas in your head, but you've never had any time, and nobody's had any time to get to know themselves. So self-awareness, is such an important thing to have in order to know yourself, but also be able to identify the right people to interact with and to become friends with, and lovers and what have you, to lead you to healthy relationships through your life. So of course, we have created a tool for transformation, one of many, which is the Pendulum Workbook and Chart Set, and don't hesitate to come and have a look at that on our website at divinealchemyhealing.co.uk. And like, share and subscribe, and thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for existing. We'll see you soon. Okay, bye.